know what? Outside of the hype for the PS5, the most ironic thing is the fact that many of the people which are hyped for it are people which think that the games look exactly the same or look like they can run on a PS4. That or people just don't have the money just to fucking buy it, and will probably have to wait a few months to even get one, considering about how the price can even be higher than a console normally is nowadays. It really is interesting knowing the possible outcome of what might happen in this situation so far. But today I'm going to be pretty much talking about the games which I liked in the PS5 reveal and just my thoughts on it. So, let's get started. Let's get into this. So one of the many games I was excited to see that was making a comeback had to be the Ratchet and Clank one. You know, it's been a solid minute since we've had that game series even make a return. And the fact that they decided to not actually continue on with the reboot, but to actually make it a direct sequel to the Nexus game is something which is actually pretty surprising. And from what the gameplay is like, it seems pretty decent at best, fast paced and having a lot of big set pieces and stuff like that. But as far as story goes, I'm going to predict that it's going to be a lot like a Crack in Time, where the two characters are separated, but will probably eventually meet up or something. And that probably with that new character in the trailer having some form of relevance, so we're probably going to be switching between her and Ratchet consistently throughout the game. And you know, in all honesty, it doesn't really seem all that bad. Many people are thinking that this game is actually loading infinite levels and stuff and thinking that it's going all this crazy with no load times, when in reality, I think the case is this. It's not like the game is loading multiple levels, but it's more like an on-rail section. So where it has a bunch of set pieces and it has a few individual levels which are within those set pieces. So they're not gonna be all that special, or they're more for the looks which are gonna be there every once in a while, or probably consistent later on throughout the game. But other than that, I'm pretty excited. I'm going to be very interested to see how the story goes for this game, specifically in how they handle about how Doctor Nefarious did this thing to where he's, I don't know, having the dimensions start, I don't know, acting crazy by opening rifts throughout space and stuff. But this is the part where I start talking about another game. So let's start. Now, the second game has to definitely be Little Big Planet or Sackboy Adventures. You know, in all honesty, I loved playing those games when I was more little, and even though it was from a different developer this time, which is Sumo Digital, aka the people behind Little Big Planet 3, and not Media Molecule like the people behind, you know, the first Little Big Planet and the second, but seeing how they recreated the game to have it fit this different style of gameplay is something which is pretty darn interesting. And it's going to be pretty fun knowing about how we're going to have to be playing these levels and not going in the classic lanes where we have to switch between them and platform, but more in a 3D-esque Mario Maker 3D World style of gameplay, which is something which I feel like will probably do well for how the game will go. So, I think that seems pretty decent, but I think this is the part where I talk about the thing which everyone is talking about, so, let's talk about Spider-Man. And now to Spider-Man Resident Evil Edition, or Resident Evil 3 Edition if I'm going to be specific. I think the funniest thing about this game is that everyone was so confused about this game just being a spin-off, which was obvious from the start. Like, yeah, guys, I'm pretty sure that, you know, the spin-off thing was, like, coming from a mile away. Like, what else were you expecting? A DLC from a game in which they stopped supporting in, like, after their last DLC in 2018? I think it would only make sense that they start off with something new. And I think another funny thing about this is the fact that many people were confused about how this game was even going to be like. In all honesty, I don't think that we should be expecting much from this game because in a way it's going to be just like Resident Evil 3 or like Infamous First Light because that's a superhero game as well. With it being more of an expansion which has models which are already in the game but adding a few new animations, maybe levels, and also adding a story with something just to keep players interested before they eventually release Spider-Man PS5, or hell, even that Ratchet and Clank game. It's all up to interpretation about how this game will do in the very end of its cycle, or how this game will do when it actually releases. And if there's another thing which I find really ironic, it's the fact that many people are going like, oh, I'm not going to buy the game because it doesn't have Peter in it. I'm like, okay, but is it the game called Spider-Man Miles Morales? So it's obvious that Miles Morales is going to be the main character. I think it'd be pretty dumb just to add in Peter, and I think it's solid that, Peter's letting Miles do his own thing. I think it'd be stupid if we're just gonna assume that Peter's just killed off for no reason whatsoever before the actual sequel of the game is even beginning. I'm just gonna assume that this game is gonna be more like a prequel to give us a bit of, I don't know, backstory to events which might happen in the next game. You never really know. So, yeah, I think this is the part where I get into the last game or games which I'm going to talk about before I give my final overview. And the last two games I'm going to be talking about are Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop. Now, in all honesty, I can't say that I'm disappointed with what Ghostwire Tokyo now looks like. I'm just surprised, because normally it's going to expect some game to where, I don't know, it's like a horror survival game, or one that's like Destiny, or like, just like a third-person shooter where you have magic, but with like a bow and arrow and stuff like that, from what you could assume from the trailers. But overall, it seems, I guess, pretty decent, but the gameplay seems surprisingly linear, even though the combat system does seem pretty different from most games. And lastly, Deathloop. Now, I've been pretty interested in this game, mainly due to its story, because it's about a guy pretty much getting hunted down or trying to break a time loop in which he keeps dying again and again and again, mainly due to some people chasing him or one person chasing him. But now we know that everyone is trying to kill him on this island, and him getting killed is like some game which is constantly going. And I have to say, it's a pretty interesting premise, but I do wonder about if this game's really gonna have you go from the beginning of every level again and again and again. I'll probably just be like that one Edge of Tomorrow, like that one movie called Edge of Tomorrow. And in all honesty, the weapons and the gameplay does seem fine. Even though the trailer does also prove that we will be encountering the girl which is chasing us, along with NPCs which try and kill us throughout the open world, or not through open world, but through the levels which you play in again and again. But either way, I'm interested in these games, and in all honesty, before I end this video, can we all agree that, like, regardless of who you are on this stupid console war, that both sides of this war have lost because the design of these consoles is just, oh boy, it's just bad. Like, I get that change is a thing with video games and consoles and stuff, and that it happens. But man, did they seriously need to go and take the design of a Wi-Fi router? Like, this is just embarrassing, Sony. Like, you've been dishing it out with the games for the past, like, what, few years. And ever since Xbox messed up that one time with having their main marketing strategy be that, oh yes, we have Halo, and yes, our Xbox and have you watch TV. But man, this is just disappointing for both sides, Xbox and PlayStation. Like, let's just hope that these guys get their shit straight when it comes to designing these consoles, because this stuff is just beyond embarrassing, with the mini fridge or trash can, along with the fact that we literally have a Wi-Fi router, which unironically looks better in black because it looks super unappealing to look at, and I would rather see just two blue lights looking at me in the dark than just staring at this ugly design which looks like a building from fucking Mirror's Edge. But that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and Wolf360 out. Later.